every now and then that you come across such a confident debut. And here we have Jamin Rajani, who's sitting with us, all beaming and smiling because he's released a 14-track debut album this year, much to so much of love and reception from music publications and from genuine music lovers across the country. Jamie, welcome to On VJ's playlist. I'm personally very happy to do this episode with you because I'm also one amongst this crowd that has absolutely loved your album. And I mean, She's Running Late is something that I can listen to on any occasion or any moment that I feel uncertain or unsure about life. And there's such a charm that that track carries. And each and every one of your 14 songs is such a testament to how one who wants to put out music and genuinely believes in his art and craft takes that kind of time and effort that you have done. So firstly, on behalf of everybody in the indie music fraternity, I'd like to congratulate you. And once again, welcome to On VJ's playlist. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Yeah.
Jamin, I was, reading an interview about you on the Telegraph, and interestingly, I came across a fact where you say that you just started learning music at the age of 23. So you're a late learner. How did that progression happen? And before music became your calling, what were you pursuing? So can you just give us a brief background about how you came into liking music and wanting to make something out of it?
I picked up the guitar at the age of 23. So yes, okay. I was late. That was the first instrument I picked up. And back then I was clueless about music and music theory and, what goes on behind in a song. I was clueless, and I think even now I'm clueless. It's just that, I just go by the aesthetics, like, what sounds good to my ears. And I think that my induction in music started right when I got into music as a listener.
Okay.
So I've been a heavy consumer of music. Even that was quite late. It was towards the end of my high school that I discovered that there's my kind of music as well. I wasn't very
professionally, but were you, sorry to cut you there, but were you pursuing singing in your younger
No, not at all. No, nothing. In fact, I could have never imagined that I'll be singing or even writing lyrics. It's just that I could hear melodies. I would just in my head come up with melodies that don't exist. So I felt like I had the urge to materialize these melodies, but I wasn't able to because I felt restricted since I did not know any of the instruments. And because guitar happens to be the most accessible instrument that you can just pick up and, give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I just, I bought like a second-hand guitar. I was living in Pune back then. And just towards the end of my college in Pune. And so I feel like all these years that I had spent listening to music, my mind was subconsciously learning the melodies and what's going on. Maybe not the theory of it, but the aesthetics of it, of music and the songs that I was fond of.
Yes.
So that's what I feel like. Even today when I make music, when I write songs, I don't make conscious decisions that I want this chord, I want to incorporate this note or a seventh or an augmented, whatever I feel that the melody in my head, whatever it demands, whatever I'm listening to. So that way it's, I would say that I still make music through the mind of a listener.
But as a young listener, since you said that much of your music making abilities or your interest towards wanting to make music came from all the ardent listening that, you will kind of put yourself through over the years. So as a young listener, who are some of the artists that you followed and, whose works you always look forward to?
Well, I think those, the ones I started with are still with me. I still go back to those artists, and precisely to be very specific, it was Jim Morrison whose voice, appealed to me the most. Like that was like a revelation for me. Like, I finally realized that, okay, this kind of music exists. While everyone around me, my peers, were listening to music which was, you know, really heavy on the orchestration and, let's say, effects. This sounded very unadulterated to me, very organic. So I was really drawn to Jim Morrison's voice, and that's when I started to just discover the entire discography of the Doors. And then there was no stopping. After that, I discovered Hank Williams, Cliff Richard, Roy Orbison, Freddie Mercury, and Dylan. So, these are the people who, initially I started listening to.
And actually, it's interesting you mentioned these, prolific names, because it kind of reflects also into the way Cutting Loose has been, brought about. Because yes, you can see the influences. There's a little bit of Bob Dylan in there. I also felt that there was a little bit of Cliff Richards also kind of that influence was also showing in some of the compositions that I heard.
Well, yeah, it is. It is like a mix of country, rock, folk. This is what it is, and then other musicians bring in their own personalities. So that definitely is there. I mean, every person, take the example of any legendary musician also, who has made it big. If you look at their work, you'll find that they are inspired by the musicians that they sort of follow. Like Mark Knopfler is heavily inspired by J.J. Cale. And Dylan is inspired by Woody Guthrie, and it's very apparent in their songs and music.
Right. But Jameen, I have to commend you for the kind of talents that you have guesting on this album. Whether it's Rahul Ram, whether it's Abhay Sharma, Susmeet Bose, and Patrick Fitzsimmons, or Fitzsimon. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his surname.
Yeah.
Fitzsimmons. Deepak Castellino, Billy Cardine. I think it's absolutely, firstly, I need to understand, how did you manage to get all of them to actually assist you with this? Because from what I understand from the the interview with the Telegraph, you started you had just about started recording this album only in December 2020, if I'm not mistaken, which was
not even then. I think we have, so Shubhraj and I, Shubhraj, who is the lead guitarist and the co-producer on the album, the two of us sat in December 2020. That's when we met first. And we started to just brainstorm, just start thinking. We started thinking out loud that what are we hearing and what is the instrumentation that a song demands. And I think we started recording only following year, March. So 2021 March.
So March was when I think somewhere, cases in, COVID cases in the country were rising again. I think that's when the Delta wave was just in its nascent stage before it hit us smack in the middle of April. So how did you manage that? Because firstly, around that time, elections also were running high in Kolkata. So how did you manage to connect with all these musicians and get them to guest on this? How did the recording also happen? Because I mean, technology, accessibility, all of it would have been, would have had its fair set of challenges for sure.
So of course, now with the technology that we have, recording technology especially, it was not really challenging, because the pandemic was not really an impediment for us. It did not hamper anything, because everything was happening remotely. The recording was happening remotely. So all the musicians who featured, who participated and contributed on the album, from there, wherever they live, whichever city they are in, they sent across their recordings, their parts to me remotely over email, or they did their bit. And because nothing was happening physically, like all of us didn't meet together to record it in the same place. So that really did not, affect us that much. The pandemic did not. And luckily, Shubhraj and I happen to be neighbors. So, it's just a coincidence that it just worked in our favor, that, we were able to actively meet even during the pandemic. So,
Jamie, you're one of rare, interesting musicians actually, who is Mumbai bred and is currently residing in Kolkata. That's like, a complete reverse. Like everybody, conventionally moves from traditionalism to modernity, and here it just the narrative has just been flipped. So, firstly, how did that happen?
So I was born to Gujarati parents in Bombay,
Yeah,
and my parents, they both of them live in Calcutta. So I was, primarily raised in Calcutta.
right.
Calcutta has been home to me for, like predominantly Calcutta is where I was raised, and I've always had one foot here in Calcutta and one in Bombay. So I
Right.
keep shuttling between the two cities, and of course, I went to college in Pune, but
Okay.
I don't mind Calcutta. I mean, I think it's just uh, people say that okay, it's like you're upgrading if you move to Bombay from Calcutta
Hmm.
or any other city, but I think it's just not true. I mean, I like it here. I don't mind being here in Calcutta, and the people I work with are here, so it's convenient. All the musicians who I'm working with, whether it's for this album or outside, they are based in Calcutta. So I like it here. I don't mind Calcutta so much. So yeah.
Because you spoke of Calcutta in the same context, I'd like to kind of fall back onto what Nishcha said while I interviewed them on as part of Parik and Singh. He said that Kolkata gives artists and musicians that kind of space because the pace of life is slower there in comparison to how it is in Mumbai or in Delhi or in Bangalore. So somewhere musicians who really want to take that kind of time and that kind of space to really invest, the right amount of energy and mind space into doing what they do. I think Kolkata is, fairly that ground that gives them that kind of breathing space to do. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course, there is the atmosphere here is more conducive to
Yeah.
art and creativity, which are disciplines that don't that which are that are not very financially lucrative. Let's just say that. So there's no pressure of, let's say, paying a heavy rent when you are
Hmm.
here. Most of these musicians are there, so they don't have to like do go take up a 9 to 5 job to make ends meet. So maybe that's the reason Calcutta has an atmosphere that's more conducive to pursuing uh, various forms of art. So that is there definitely, and also I feel that there are so many musicians in Calcutta, and
Yeah.
a lot of them live like as a community. It's like a community of musicians, where people are supporting each other,
Right.
or ideally that's how it should be, even if it isn't, but to some extent that's how it is. So yeah, that is what I think works in the favor of artists here.
So, when you speak about Kolkata in that light, do you think when once in a while you swift to this side of the coast, from you come from the east coast to the west coast, do you feel the same energy in Mumbai or in Pune or any other Indian city that you travel to?
So I feel like what you said about being Calcutta being laid back,
Yeah.
it's there. Like let's just say, for the lack of a better word, let's just put it that way, but I don't work that way. Yeah, like
Right.
that really ticks me off when I see that someone is laid back or is not being let's say proactive.
Hmm.
It's the end. Like I wouldn't want to work with someone like that.
Yeah.
So that is not how I work, even though I am in Calcutta.
Right.
So even if you feel like you don't have to do what, let's say, a Bombay will compel you to do, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you just use that to your advantage and maybe misuse that luxury
Hmm.
that Calcutta offers.
Right.
So that's what I feel like. It's not something which is very desirable. I feel people need to just be keep their word,
Hmm.
which is something like, even if you are not answerable to someone else,
Right.
uh, people have to, there's something called integrity, right? Like you are cheating on yourself if you are not being productive every day. So that, and of course, yes, there is a difference of energy in Calcutta and Bombay,
Yeah.
But I also feel to some extent that it is an exaggeration. In many ways, I also feel like in Bombay, people end up spending a lot of time in commute, in transit. So that doesn't count as productivity. Like, you are not being
Exactly.
productive there. So,
Exactly.
I remember when I was working in Bombay, all my work stints, I had a job with a corporate conglomerate, and then I was with an advertising agency. So I was working in Bombay for 3 years, and I was spending about 2 hours every day, more than that perhaps, just in the local trains.
Yeah.
So that doesn't count as work for sure. So yeah, I mean, it's there. Like, if there's a difference of lifestyle. So yeah.
Well, coming back to cutting loose, Jamie, I think, I spoke about this to Nishchay also, and I think it's commendable that you have an 8-minute track. So, firstly, the album has 14 tracks already, and one track alone is almost about 8.5 minutes.
Yeah.
In the day and age now, where we have music that's been determined by social media, where 1 minute music is now the new reality or the new trend, suddenly something that has taken over the way music is made, music is consumed somewhere. You do feel that somewhere time spans have now started dictating the way music is made?
Oh, yes. In fact, the producer I was working with
Hmm.
uh, in the beginning, initially on this album, he was really against the idea of this 8.5 minute track or anything above 5 minutes, not just this
Right.
one. So any song 5 minutes plus, he was against it. He was like, either you discard it or shorten it. And I was not willing to do that, just because I felt like, there's the idea behind doing an album of 14 songs, which is an hour long, is that there should be something for everyone. Like, there should be some takeaway for everyone who's listening to the album. I know
Right.
that the audience for this, let's say, this 8.5 minute song is really minuscule. But, there are a few people who are takers of this song as well.
Right.
And then there is a really short song also, which is just even less than 2 minutes. So I feel like there should be I intended to have something for everyone on this
Right.
album. It's the idea was never that everyone should like each and every song.
Hmm.
Even once I've listened to an album from start to end, after that, I keep, whenever I'm going back to the album, any album for that matter, I go
Hmm.
back to the tracks that I like the most. So
Right.
I know that, people are not going to always listen to the album from start to end. But once you've heard all, people will go back to the favorites. So just the idea is that, there's something for each listener.
But do you think somewhere that also kind of endangers the prospect of the album? And why I'm saying it, why do I ask this is because uh, unfortunately, given the kind of music that is, put out there in the market, attention spans have, you know, dipped
Yes.
largely. So for you to find your listeners, firstly, 14 track album, one song is about 8.5 minutes. Why did you feel the need that you had to pack in all the 14 songs at once? Like, if from another perspective, you could have chosen to have released maybe two albums or maybe a couple of EPs or maybe some of them as singles. So what made you reach that decision that you wanted to club all of them at once and release them all out at once?
So I did release a few of them as singles ahead of the album release,
Right.
because I know that, nobody is going to, maybe not nobody, but there will be very few people who are going to listen to the album from start to end. And like you said, that there aren't many takers for, let's say, this 8.5 minute long song.
Right.
It's true. I can see the statistics. I can see that it's not, uh, the numbers are, let's say, it's not as popular as, let's say, a shorter song
Right.
is on the album. That's true. But the idea was that I wanted to be true to the roots. The people who I'm inspired by, they still release albums.
Right.
That's what I have been listening to. And also releasing it in two halves or two parts or as EPs would mean that I'm going back to the same sound again in the second installment. I wanted to do this and hopefully get done with this sound. Maybe in the next release, I want to explore a different sound. I felt like these set of 14 songs could be packaged as one batch of songs, like, sounding like they are from the same collection. So that's because I saw that scope. So I said, I want to, and I was never apprehensive of releasing an album. I was ready for both the pros and cons.
Okay.
So that's something that it's not a surprise. Like, I'm not surprised that, okay, people are listening to individual tracks and the shortest ones are more heard than compared to the longer ones. So that is something which hasn't disappointed me. I mean, it's something that I've come to terms with the reality, but is that going to stop me from releasing more albums? Maybe not. So yeah.
It's been more than a month and a half since the album hit, music streaming platforms. And like I said, reviews and reception has been abundant at large. So I want to ask you is, when the words that are written in favor, when they do not, when they do not necessarily translate into numbers, firstly, what kind of a mind space does that put you in? And secondly, I know artists say this, and I say it on many occasions, that the numbers or the metrics don't really matter. But is it easier said than done? Is what I'd like to gauge from you.
What people are writing about the album is great. I mean, that's fine. But what matters is how many people are listening to it. Ultimately, are people listening to it? A lot of people, to a great degree, depend on, let's say, or intend to depend on digital stream revenue from the digital stream.
Right.
So of course it matters, how it's consumed, whether it's released in physical format and people are willing to buy it, or buy it on Bandcamp, or stream it on various platforms. That is what matters, irrespective of how it is consumed.
Right.
People writing a review, giving it a 5 out of 5, calling it incredible is one thing, but how, that's fine. How it just comes, these reviews are like, they come with an expiry date. Like, the album is being talked about for, let's say, a few weeks, and then it just fizzles out. All the hype fizzles out.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is to come up with something which stays, which is, people keep going back to it.
Right.
Not like, what happens is that I release an album, after a month, people will ask me, oh, what next? What is your next release? I've spent so much time, let's say, every artist spends so much time into one album, EP, single, whatever it is. And people are really impatient, which also, shows that what we were already talking about, the concentration span going down. So yeah, I mean, there are, like, we keep going back to the Beatles and Doors and Rolling Stones and Jethro Tull, because they made something which is so compelling that we can't get enough of it. We want to go back and keep listening to it, which is why they are still trending and amongst the top artists. But if you look at indie artists, mostly, local artists and indie artists which don't have a backing of a record label, you'll see that, they've got probably just very few listeners every month, if the album or the release is old. And now even 2 months old is old. So, that's how it is. Like, I feel that this is also the result of there being an oversupply of music.
Thank you for saying that, because in all honesty, as much as I would like to be that person who listens to all kinds of music and who listens to everyone who is, sending new music my way, unfortunately, I'm not able to give that kind of time, because I'm so like there's an EP that's coming out at once. There's an album that's coming out at once. There are a string of singles that are coming out at once. How does one divide time? How does one find that time to gauge and write also, or objectively about a release? Thank you for putting that across, because I think it's important. It kind of it is imperative that this is addressed, because what happens is I've been discussing this in my personal interactions with other artists, where I have pretty much voiced it that what has happened this year particularly is because um, when we started with 2022, the Omicron was still there. So normalcy, or the resumption of normal life, kind of took a while, and people sat on the work that they probably might have already had ready to put out at the in the initial months of 2022. But now what's happening is suddenly it's like all the work is coming out in the last 1 or 2 months, and so I mean that's why the attention span has dipped marginally. Do you also have you also been receiving such inputs from
Oh yes, no, of course. Even I am swamped with music and people asking for feedback. That
yeah,
happens, but I don't find it to be like let's say compelling.
right,
It's just there. Like there is. It's not like the most of the songs that are being released are filling up a void. It's just not adding any value. I feel
right,
like even if those songs weren't released, of course this is very subjective, but I feel like most of majority of the releases, like even if had it not been there, we have enough music to listen to. I think we don't even need one more song at all. Like there's so much music already that has been made, which is great,
hmm,
that even if we spend the rest of our lives fishing out songs that we haven't listened to,
yeah.
we won't be able to. So do we need more music? I feel we don't need even one more song. We have enough music to for the rest of our lives, I feel. But yeah, I feel like most of these releases are adding much value, is also because this is again my observation that there's no entry barrier. One, there's easy access. There are
Hmm.
people helping each other out, that's there. And now a lot of people also have access to the best sound engineers, best equipment, so everyone can make themselves sound good.
Right.
There's a lot of flesh, but if you take out the flesh and imagine how just the skeleton is, I
Yeah.
feel it doesn't it's just very ordinary, let's say, and very mediocre. But because so much of those, let's say, makeup has gone in, that anything and everything can be made to sound good.
But do you think that also largely stems from a place, Jenny, where there is a constant pressure also to create? Do you think that is also somewhere the underlying factor that is leading to the surge of releases?
No, now there isn't. In fact, with independent music,
Yeah.
with independent artists, and with there's no dependency on a record label. A record label is usually the one which pressurizes artists to churn out music.
Right.
Independent artists don't need to. They are not answerable to anyone, ideally. So I feel that shouldn't be the case. So I don't know why is there pressure, but yes, of course, now it's like there's so much happening that it's like it's a hyperactive island and it's overpopulated, and that there is pressure that you have to be seen all the time,
Yeah.
you have to be heard all the time. So if you haven't put out something in, let's say, 6 months or a year, you're forgotten. So in order to remind people of your existence, you have to put out something for the sake
Yeah.
of it, even if it is not something which is worth putting out. So that happens, of course. But I mean, how to react to that, whether to give in or not to give in, that is, of course, at the artist's discretion.
Jenny, I want to ask you, who are your favorite artists from the Indian independent music scene currently? Because I am a strong believer of the feeling of community, and seeing the scene flourish in recent times has been the most gratifying feeling for me as a listener. So, if I may ask, who are some of your favorites?
I love Peter Cat Recording Company, F16's Dot, Aditi Saigal, she goes by the name Dot. And there's this singer-songwriter who happens to be a friend of mine. I don't think he's put out music officially, but I really am looking forward to his music. It's going to be out soon, and I think people should watch out for him. His name is Rachit Gaur.
Okay.
I think he's got a band which is called Blind Sherpa.
Okay.
He's really good. Love his music. Yeah, I've had the chance to listen to some of his songs. So these are the ones that come to my mind. And oh yeah, I mean, this one album that I just listened to, I'm forgetting the artist name. I think the album is called At Your Service. It came out this year, and I think it blew my mind. It is incredible. Everyone should listen to that album.
I think you've given me some homework to do also, because even at this moment I also can't recollect having heard this album. But
I think this is an artist who's based out of Shillong, if I'm not wrong. Yeah,
which again
really
explains, which I think again explains why discoverability and attention span has really dipped, because I mean,
it is an album.
It is an album.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think I must check it out now. I think that's the first thing I'm going to do after we have finished the interview.
Yeah.
Lastly,
even Warren Mendonça. Yeah.
Blackstrap Blues.
Yeah.
Legend.
Yes. Yeah.
Lastly, Jaimin, to conclude our interview, if I may ask, what is it about the way? What do you think is the Indian independent music scene getting right, or what is it getting wrong? And where do you think can we, move ahead? In what direction can the scene progress further?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I can only speak for myself, and I am, I can only be a judge for myself, and I'm nobody to even judge my own work. And I just feel that, I don't see there's much of music that works, like I said before, that most of it does not work for me, but I really have nothing to complain, because there's so much of music that is out. Like, I don't feel the need to, have more music that, why is there not so much of music being put out that works for me. I mean, I am okay with it not being out, and or if something is not working for me, it doesn't work for me, because I just feel like, it's really heavy on production work. That's it. If that much of, let's say, work goes into creation, and I also feel like, just knowing the craft is not enough. Like, a lot of people know the craft, but art is not something you can learn. It's something that, you're born with, let's say, or you have it within you. Like, you can go to the best teachers, and you can go to Berkeley, and you can learn to play guitar really well. But when it comes to creating music and composing, it's, of course, the craft is what acts as the framework and the constitution for it. But I don't think that everyone who can play the guitar really well, let's say, or any instrument for that matter, are necessarily good composers. So I feel like majority of these people probably, I mean, let's just put it this way, that don't have it in them to make music, but they know their instrument really well.
Right.
And these are the people who are putting out music mostly, which does not work for me, because just because you've incorporated something which is complex, intricate, that does not work for me. I think a lot of music is musicians' music. It does not speak to me. It's heavy on mechanics, but it doesn't make me feel the way my favorite songs make me feel.
Correct.
So that is what I'm looking for, something else, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people it works for. It works for a lot of people. So all kinds of music, songs, and artists, they've got their takers, and they've got their own audience, irrespective of how big or small it is. And yeah, I mean, I don't know which, like, I don't think I can suggest anything that should be done differently. But yeah, this is what I would. This is my take on it.
So, would it be fair to ask, what next now that you've released a full-fledged album? What are the big plans for yourself as an artist?
I am right now, even now, I'm trying my best to keep it alive,
Right.
as much as possible. So that I would like to capitalize on this one because of the amount of work that has gone in. For the last 2 years, we've been working on this. So I think it's only fair that I go all out, even with, trying to make it reach out to as many people as possible, whatever I can do within my capacity.
Right.
That, and later on, I do have a couple of things that I'm working on. It's not an album, but it's something different. Like, it's a different sound that I'm wanting to explore.
Right.
That's the intention right now. I don't know what is going to come out of it. It's something I'm already working on, and at least a couple of singles. These are what I'm working on, and I'm working on these singles because in order to work on an album, you have to have enough material to constitute an album. If I feel like, there's a sound that I want to explore, or I'm wanting to experiment with, and it's not like 8 to 10 songs that I want to experiment with. If it's just one, so that's the reason I'm, right now working on this song. In fact, 2 of them, which I should be able to put out next year, hopefully. Yeah.
Well, I wish you all the very best, Jamie. Thank you so much for talking to me today. And like I have already mentioned, congratulations on all the love and reception that you're receiving for Cutting Loose. And here's to many more.
Thank you. Thanks.